I grew up around the ocean, and there was always one animal that I feared more than absolutely any other, and that's the lion's mane jellyfish. They are basically my biggest enemy. So naturally, in today's video, I'm going to keep them as a pet in my own house, and we are going to find out if keeping these jellyfish is actually a cool idea or a massive mistake. I'm going to be keeping two completely different animals, the harmless moon jellyfish and the dreaded lion's mane jellyfish. And to prove just how crazy this is, at the end of the video, I'm going to take a tentacle from the venomous jellyfish and I'm going to intentionally sting myself with it. So you definitely want to watch all the way to the end so you don't miss out. So to make this happen, we first need a tank. And I contacted a company called Ocean's Cloud and they were kind enough to send out one for completely free. And getting a specialized tank like this is really important, because jellyfish actually cannot live in a normal square fish tank. If they do, they basically just get stuck in one of the corners and they can't swim. And after a couple of days, the box arrived and I could start getting it set up. And the tank was basically ready right out of the box. All I had to do was rinse the filter media that it came with and drop it into the sump section, which is the filter. And now that that's done, we have to mix the salt water. And this was actually a lot harder than I expected, and I'm pretty sure I measured the salinity about 100 times, but after an hour or so, the tank was finally filled and I can turn on the built-in LEDs. It has a ton of different color modes, and I can only imagine how cool this will look once the jellyfish are in. So, for the next step, we actually need to cycle the tank for 2 weeks with the beneficial bacteria, so the water is safe and ready for the jellyfish. So, I'll see you then.
2 weeks later.
So, the jellyfish have just arrived, and I've been acclimatizing them to room temperature in this box. As you can see, they're basically invisible, but they are in there. So, to add the jellyfish, I used a comically large spoon instead of a net, and this helps to maintain their tentacles, which could be ripped off with a net. Alright, so the jellies are now in. And let's see what they look like with some light. They might not look the best on camera, but in person they are really cool. Let me show you a closer look. So, you've probably noticed this by now, but they don't actually do that much. They kinda just float around and they look really cool while doing it. And the whole point of the circular tank is literally just to keep them in constant motion, as they don't actively hunt. They just basically let the flow of the water push food directly into their tentacles. And now, if you look really closely right here, you can see the tiny tentacles around the outer rim. And technically, these are venomous, but they are so incredibly small that if you stuck your bare hand right into the water, the sting wouldn't even be able to penetrate your skin. Plus, they literally won't eat anything bigger than a baby sea monkey. And they are really cool, don't get me wrong, but they're also completely harmless and a little boring. So, to step things up a notch, I decided to do something crazier. So I emptied the tank and safely gave away the jellies to a friend, which really wanted them for some reason, and I made room for something a lot more exciting, and a little more dangerous. I wanted the ultimate boss, the lion's mane jellyfish, and here's a crazy fact about these things. They can grow up to 6.5 feet wide, with tentacles reaching over 100 feet long, which is just completely insane. And obviously a 100-foot sea monster isn't going to fit into my tiny aquarium. So I took out the boat and I tried to catch a baby one. And the first one I spotted was the absolute perfect size, but I couldn't get a good grip on it, so it sank way too deep. Luckily, I found the second one just after it, and I went for it and I scooped it up with a bucket. And now I needed to fill the tank back up. And since I caught this guy in the ocean near my house, I could just fill the aquarium with actual ocean water, which meant the parameters were instantly perfect for it. But here's where I made a massive mistake. I didn't have a big spoon to transfer the jellyfish like I did with the other ones, so I decided just to use my hands, with a glove of course, and that turned out to be a terrible choice. The tentacles got instantly tangled up in the process, so when I went to turn the aquarium pump on, the poor jellyfish basically just tumbled around in the current without being able to swim. So I had to take it out and let it go, but don't worry, because I got this instead. And this is called the blue jellyfish. It's basically the exact same thing as a lion's mane jellyfish, but they only max out at around 10 inches, making them a way better choice for the aquarium. And the most important part for the end of the video, they are known for having a pretty nasty sting. Before I go ahead and sting myself with the tentacle, I need to show you exactly how these things eat. Jellyfish are strictly carnivorous, which means they can eat a huge variety of marine life, but since Artemia, that are basically tiny saltwater shrimp, are super common in the aquarium hobby, I figured they would make a really good first meal. Now, inside this massive pipette I have a bunch that I hatched myself, and if you remember from earlier, jellyfish don't actively chase their prey, they just wait for the food to drift into their path. So to speed up the process, I took the pipette and blasted the shrimp directly into its tentacles. And at first, I couldn't really see if there was any stuck in the tentacles, so I went for a second time. And after the second blast, I still couldn't tell if the jellyfish had grabbed any of the shrimp or not, so I zoomed in to take a closer look, and honestly the tentacles looked completely empty, which got me thinking, if I really want to see the jellyfish eat, I'm probably going to need some bigger food. So I headed back down to the water, but first I had to say a quick hi to the local geese. I took my net and I dug through a bunch of seaweed, and on the very first try I actually managed to catch 2 live shrimp. One was pretty tiny and the other one was a little bit bigger, and this was going to be absolutely perfect food for the jellyfish. I started by just pouring the smaller shrimp right into the tank, and I watched it for a couple of minutes, but this guy was incredibly agile and completely dodged the jellyfish altogether, so I had to step in. I sucked the shrimp up into this tube so I could basically just inject it right into its tentacles. I took my time and I aimed dead center under the jellyfish, and I completely missed. I guess the shrimp just really didn't want to be food today. But I wasn't going to give up. I lined up for a second shot and I pushed a little harder, and bullseye, I sent it straight into the middle of the jellyfish. Now, you're probably thinking, why doesn't the shrimp just swim away? Well, the second it touches those tentacles, it gets stung and completely immobilized. The jellyfish then will break down and eat the soft parts of the shrimp, leaving just the hard shell behind. And this all happens right in the center of the jellyfish up under the bell, which is exactly where the shrimp is right now. So over the next day or so, this jelly will completely consume the shrimp. But while it does its thing, we still have one more shrimp, and since this one is a little bigger, I thought it would be an awesome experiment to see if it could survive a full day in the tank by itself. I dropped it in, and this time I'm not going to help the jellyfish at all. And if this shrimp survives the night, it earns its freedom and I'm going to release it back into the ocean. And at first, the shrimp really didn't seem to care, it just started exploring the tank, and about 15 minutes later, it actually calmed down and just started watching the jellyfish. And it was honestly pretty cool to see this. You would think that a shrimp like this would be terrified of a big predator floating right above it, but maybe it somehow knows that the jellyfish isn't actively hunting it. So, now that everything has calmed down a bit, I'm going to go to bed and check back on this tank tomorrow. Alright, so it's the next morning, and you're probably not going to believe this. The big shrimp actually survived, and honestly, being trapped in a tank this small with a massive predator floating right above you, I really didn't think this guy had a chance. But seeing him chilling now completely fine was an awesome surprise, and of course a deal is a deal, so it's time to give this guy his freedom back. And now that the survivor is safely back into the ocean, it's time to check if the jellyfish had finished its meal. And I took a closer look, and at first the shrimp seemed to be completely intact, but I started thinking maybe a shrimp this size is actually too big for it to eat. But again, when I came back 2 hours later, I was proven completely wrong. There was basically nothing left of the shrimp, just an empty shell and a head sitting at the bottom of the tank, which is absolutely crazy to me. The jellyfish must have just finished up its meal this morning and dropped the leftovers right while I was gone, and I double checked the jelly's bell just to be sure, and yep, it's completely empty. So, we've now seen how it eats, which means it's finally time for the moment you've been waiting for, the sting test. I'm not going to lie, I was incredibly nervous about this. I have terrible memories of getting stung by these things growing up, but I promised I'd do it, so I reached in and carefully picked up a tentacle. And I laid it flat right on the sensitive skin on the inside of my forearm and braced myself. But nothing really happened. So I tried again and still nothing. I then figured there might be something wrong with the specific tentacle that I got. So I went back into the tank and I grabbed a completely different one and I pressed it onto my arm a couple of times. And you can clearly see that it's sticking to my skin in the video, but I still didn't really feel anything. I have absolutely no idea what's wrong, but honestly I'm pretty happy that I didn't end up in pain today. But I'm a man of my word, and if this video gets 20,000 likes, I will do this experiment again, but I won't stop until I actually get stung. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.